So much of my life experience over the last couple months have been really realigning back into what my soul is here to do. You know, I wrote a post about this on Instagram, which you guys can check out, but I feel like every 7 years, my body calls forth a renegotiation of what it is that I'm here to do next. And what's so fascinating is I came to the realization and reality that the version of me that is, that is living in this reality was created by the version of me that created it years ago, It's just so fascinating, the younger versions of us that have a certain consciousness and a certain vision and a certain come from build these lives. And if we don't take time to really be in the pause and really ask ourselves, hang on a second, is the way I'm doing life still aligned? Does it still feel energetically rich? Does it still bring me energy day by day, moment by moment? Or am I living under a construct that was created by a past version of me? And when I look back on my life, like every 7 years, I have this shift, right? So 7 years ago today, or this week rather, was when I shut down Hungry for Happiness and I built Pause Breathwork, like literally overnight. For those of you who were with me on that ride, I'm like, we're doing this now because I just felt this deep call. 7 years before that was when I was living in London, England, and my soul was calling me to start the next chapter, go back home to Canada, where I'm from, and really get into personal development because that is what my soul was just like, we've got to go on this path. And so I left London, England, and started my business, started a few personal development businesses. And then before that was when I got hired on Smallville. And that journey led me to traveling the world for 4 years to 33 countries with a backpack and a journal and just like the wild unknown. And I've been feeling this deep call inside of me once again to not pivot, but rise into what my soul is here to do. And when I really look at what in my life gives me the highest energetic return, it's being a speaker. It's what I've always wanted to do. It's what I've always done. Like even before I started business building, I would run workshops and speak on stages and, just having my background as a dancer, it's just like always been something that has felt so aligned and so fun. And, when I think of the process of speaking, I love every single aspect of it. From the creation to the performance to the pitching to the just everything. Everything just feels aligned and beautiful and amazing. And so I thought to myself, what if I was to spread Pause Breathwork? What if I was to spread the mission of making emotional suffering optional and spreading the mission of helping people activate their aliveness, not through yes, we're still going to do funnels and all the online digital stuff, but what if it was through human interaction, moving rooms of people? And I was like, all right, let's go. And I realized so much of the last little while has been the deep call of this is what you're meant to do. But then my mind and my ego is but we have this business that we have to run and all these employees and all these things that we need to tend to. And I realized, I've been studying a lot of the war of art and talking about creative resistance. And I realized that is just my creative resistance talking. It's not the truth. The truth is I get to do this and I get to have pause, run and be fluid and just beautiful. So the 7-year itch, they talk about the 7-year itch in relationships, and mine is the 7-year itch when it comes to my career and service. So here we go again. Let's go. This episode is brought to you by Pause Breathwork Facilitator Training, our 6-month journey to turn you into a masterful breathwork facilitator. You guys, this journey is not just about becoming a facilitator and doing the work. It's really about you stepping into that archetype of a healer, a coach, a practitioner, the version of you that knows you are here to help people. And if you've known this all along, but maybe you haven't found the right vehicle in order to actually serve and do it in a way that feels good, then I invite you to go to www.pausebreathwork.com/facilitator and apply to become a certified Pause Breathwork facilitator. I'm so grateful that I got to sit down today with a dear friend of mine, Jenn Pike. She is a medical exercise specialist and functionally integrative diagnostic nutritionist. She specializes in women's health and hormones, which So many of my girlfriends right now are going through perimenopause, and I hear it's like a whole thing. I know that this episode is going to bring you guys a lot of clarity, a lot of just ease. I think sometimes when we feel like our bodies are fighting us, it can feel like so disheartening. And so I brought Jenn on the podcast today to just like really give you some insight, some inspiration, and some education on really how to tend to your body during these times. She is the best-selling author of 3 books, The Simplicity Project, The Simplicity Kitchen, and The Simplicity Body. Jenn is the fiercely driven founder of the Hormone Project, the Perimenopause Project, Synced, and the Audacious Woman. She offers people powerful programs dedicated to empowering and teaching women what they should have known about their bodies all along. Jenn is also the host of the Simplicity Sessions, which is ranked in the top 1% of podcasts all around the world. You guys, I cannot wait for you to dive into this episode. And before we dive into today's episode, I want to share one little thing. When I first started out as a mindset coach, right when I graduated, I thought I had it all figured out. I had the certifications, the journal prompts, the affirmations, the frameworks, the blueprints. I had it all. But as I got into coaching, I was realizing that something deep was missing. My clients were like getting it intellectually, but they weren't really changing. I wasn't seeing this sustainable change with them. And everything shifted the day that I started adding breathwork into their coaching business. And when I first started teaching breathwork, I just did a little bit of breathwork at the beginning, a little bit of breathwork at the end, and the results that I saw were astounding. I knew that that was the missing link between knowing and embodying, between insight and transformation. So when I eventually went deeper into breathwork and started really integrating it into my business, everything skyrocketed. Clients were experiencing these insane quantum shifts, some in just one session. And I realized there is no such thing as one-way healing. As my clients were having these crazy transformations, these beautiful breakthroughs, I was being healed as I was healing them. That's when I knew I'm going to do this work for the rest of my life. And that's exactly what we teach inside the Pause Breathwork Facilitator Program. This isn't just a certification. This is a portal to becoming a competent trauma-informed coach, to become a confident trauma-informed facilitator, building a purpose-driven business that actually changes lives and lights you up. And the beautiful part is you get to do that deep inner work in the process. Our grads are now earning anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000 a month, helping others come home to themselves through the power of the breath. So if you are listening right now and you have that fire inside of you, you have that deep desire to change the world, then this might be your invitation. Head on over to pausebreathwork.com/facilitator to apply for the next class. All right, my loves, let's dive right into today's conversation.
Can't be contained. That's what I'm talking about.
Jenn Pike, welcome to the Can't Be Contained podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
We were right in the middle of some juicy shit, and I was like, wait, stop, let's press record. Okay, what we were talking about is human design and as it pertains to female entrepreneurs. And you were saying how you used to run your business like a Manny Jenn until you realize you're a projector. Dude, I have the same story.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like, the best way I can describe it to people is it was like the universe just handed me this massive permission slip to make the changes that my soul knew needed to happen. But my mind and that, multi-passionate version of myself was just like, say yes to everything, create everything, impact everywhere.
What was that shift like for you? Going from the Manny Jenn way of working, which is just go, 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 generate, create, to Projector, which is a lot less energy.
It was awesome, actually. It was like, it's one of those things that I didn't know that I needed to know it until I knew it, and then I couldn't unknow it. And I literally remember taking a deep breath and having an audible sigh and my shoulders dropping and being like, yeah, okay, this really makes sense. This resonates. And then it's been, a slow scrub and just uncoupling things over the last few years to get to a place where for me, it feels manageable. So, oftentimes projectors are told you can only work 2 to 4 hours a day. And I would die if I did that. Like,
I'd be so bored. I'd be like, okay, now what, guys? What are we going to do now?
But so I have now, all these years later, I really feel like I have found a way where I get to, live my work out loud and, take care of my family and my body and my marriage and all the pieces of who I am in a really beautiful way.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. For those of you listening and you don't know your human design, and whether you're a business owner or not, just go do the test. Text your mom and say, what's my birth time? I honestly text Eric's mom because I just forget all the time. I'm like, what's his birth time? Because there's always like a new chart. It's like the gene keys and then there's the this. And then I'm like, every time, obviously, I got to get the dirt on Eric, So I always forget. I'm like, damn it. What did his mom say? Sorry, it's me again. Can you give me that one more time? I promise I'll save it this time.
Well, what I love about human design is, first of all, like our gene keys are inside of our human design. And it's like, if you've ever done something like a Strength Finder or Colby Index, Myers-Briggs, or even an Enneagram, they're more like quizzes where as you evolve and change over time, your answers will change. And so the results can change. But human design, like when and where you were born and what time, never changes. So I was at a Joe Dispenza conference, and have you done any of his stuff before? Not at his events, but I've done it like solo in my ears.
Solo in your ears. I love that. And I was sat next to, like, he didn't create human design, but like the dude who created human design, like basically told this dude all about it. And then he wrote all the books on it, like Chet Yan, his name is.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I got to meet him and I was fascinated. And he was also a projector and kept telling me things about projectors. And then finally he's like, do you want to just come to my house and do like a full reading? He lives close to San Diego. I'm like, yes, I do. And so he gave me like the craziest reading ever that I listen to like once every 90 days because it's so deep and detailed, and sometimes certain things hit and it makes me realize, I love that you spoke to that. Your body was just like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not crazy. Or like, oh, I can work this way and it actually, works. And I think for projectors who've been conditioned to work as a many Jenn, the story for me anyways was, well, when I slow down, things are going to fall apart, which never is true.
For sure. Yeah, there, and like this energy of lack and scarcity. If I slow down, everything's going to slow down. Like, how could it possibly continue to grow and be abundant if I'm not behind the steering wheel, literally doing the thing?
Yeah.
So it was a big reframe for me. I had to teach myself how to do things differently. And now it's like we always learn things in hindsight, right? Now at this place, I can look back and I look at what my old schedule, used to be and how I used to do things. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Ow.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I'm so excited that you're on the show. Thank you so much. It was so fun to hang out with you maybe 6 months ago now.
Yeah. Fall, I think.
Up in Calgary and hang out at MYM, Sarah's event. It's always fun to get that crew together. It's such an amazing community, and it's just been so epic following you for the last decade, maybe. I feel like Dan Martell honestly was the first person that did tell me about you back in the day.
I think you and I met it was an Archangel event. We met in person for the first time at Giovanni's event.
Was it Giovanni that introduced us?
Dan was there. But I feel like it was like 2016, 2017. And you were, at that time, it was Hungry for Happiness.
Yeah.
Business that you were running and what you were doing. So it's been a long time.
So for the listeners who don't know you yet, give us a little insight on what gets you up in the morning, what you're excited about, the mission that you're on, a little bit of a background story of you.
So the background is, I've been doing this for a long time. My parents laugh and they're like, yeah, like since you walked out of the womb. My mom's like, you came out doing two things, asking questions and walking lunges, and kind of haven't stopped since.
That is amazing.
So, my background, like I knew from a really young age, I loved fitness. My dad took me into a gym with him when I was 6, and I was not to work out, but just to kind of go and be in the environment. And I was just so enamored by watching humans move their bodies and like having fun and it being for joy. And so I really loved that environment. And when I was 9, you know, where we lived, they had like a kids activity club that I was part of. And at 9, I was asked to teach the 2 and 3-year-olds the like kinder movement. And I just loved it. And so as I got older, by the time I was 17, I was teaching the group exercise classes, you know, where I grew up. And I knew then that this was the industry I was going to get into. And so I started off, I went to school and became a medical exercise specialist, did some post-rehab, personal training, worked with a lot of athletes, loved it, super fun, but was mainly working with a lot of guys. And it was great, but I would go home and work part-time at the gym I grew up at with women, and it was such a vastly different energy. And I started to find myself really recognizing these women as the everyday athletes of life, and that started to really light me up. Because they were sharing just a lot of the struggles where they felt dismissed, no one understood them. You know, they were, you know, working out, getting certain results, working out and eating well, getting certain results. But there were certain things they were going through that they felt like, you know, everything they were told was fine, but they didn't feel fine. So I started to dive deeper into, you know, my own work. And gosh, I went back to school so many different times. When I'd get to a point in my industry, I was like, I feel like I need to know more about this. And, you know, through all those years, ended up really diving a lot into hormones and women's health and empowering women that's what I do every day. So, you know, what gets me up is helping to connect one more woman to her body and really teaching her everything she should have known from a very young age. And, you know, my kids now are teenagers. I have an almost 19-year-old daughter and 16-year-old son. And so my work has grown alongside watching my children grow and evolve. And, you know, so a lot of what I do now, bless you, girl.
Thank God for that mute button.
So much of what I do now. So I have a fitness side of my company, which is I run an online fitness studio called Synced, which is based on the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle and the lunar wisdom of our bodies.
So good. So
and
good.
so it teaches, it is honestly like I get up early 3 mornings a week, 6 a.m. downstairs in the basement, teaching our community of like 1,200 women. And it just lights my soul on fire. It does a good job. It's so fun. And we take women through the journey of understanding the phases of their cycle, but then also postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause to like, how do you continue to meet your body at all these different transitions? You know, there's so much noise out in the world about how you should and what you're supposed to. And it's like, can we just bring it back into our own body and like get her opinion? Can we start to like trust her? For sure. You know? Yeah. So that's one lens of the company. And then I teach a lot of programs about hormones and perimenopause project. And then I do a lot of business mentorship now for practitioners. You know, it's crazy, but I registered this company, you know, 28 years ago when I was 17. And it's just been, I mean, you and I have known each other in business for a long time. Being an entrepreneur is the greatest personal development journey you will ever go on.
Say it again.
The greatest personal development ever go on. And it can be really hard sometimes to find yourself amongst KPIs and SOPs and strategy and, you know, launches and what an industry is telling you to do. And I just really love working with the woman who is here to do things differently.
Yeah. Oof. I love that so much. You know, I don't know what it is, but so many of my clients, so many of my friends, I'm just hearing this now more than ever, that perimenopause is like effing with them. And it sort of is this thing that like, I haven't gone through it yet. And apparently it's just rocking people's worlds in the worst way. And it's just so not a good time. What are some of the things that you can suggest to help women during that phase? Because I even saw, Dr. Maritza Snyder had this like reel on her page the other day that was just like, you know, being hilarious about what it's like to be in perimenopause. I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good time. Yeah. So what advice can you give or what support can you give? Because I know there's a ton of my audience who is currently there.
So I think the first part is to understand that it's a long journey. Like it's not a season. It's not a phase. It's, you know, most women are going to go through this for years, if not about a decade of their life. And it can start anywhere symptom wise from as young as 35 years old, you know, up into the age of 55. So there's about a 20-year 7-year span, and every woman's going to
Oh,
experience.
that's great.
No, like you don't hang out there for 20 years.
Oh, God.
Like I have women who come into our practice who are 38 and have a lot of symptoms where they're struggling with mood and anxiety and really worsening PMS and PMDD and hair loss, and they're having a difficult time conceiving or maintaining a pregnancy, or, just feels like the rug is constantly being pulled out from under them. And then I have women who are like 45 and reach out and say, I know I'm in the age bracket of perimenopause. I'm not quite symptomatic yet, or I don't know if these symptoms line up with perimenopause. Because for most of us, we were not taught perimenopause. We were taught menopause. This is something that happens to your mom and grandma when they're old.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of women, it's like, if you're not having hot flashes, you're not having vaginal dryness, you're not having anxiety, then you don't have symptoms. And to date right now, as we're recording this, there's actually 103 different symptoms that are correlated with perimenopause. So it's like, you can literally take every physical, mental, emotional symptom that a woman may be feeling, and you can put it next to a lot of the symptoms of perimenopause and be like, well, that checks. One of the issues that I see happening right now is a lot of things are just being brushed under the perimenopause rug and not necessarily being explored deeply enough. So when I work with women who are in their late 30s and their early 40s who are kind of coming in hot, like they just have a lot going on, you always want to look at the nervous system. You've got to look at what's going on with the adrenals, what's happening with her thyroid, and look at the gut. Like those are the three main areas for women that I would say if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I don't have a lot of symptoms that I would categorize as being hormonal, but I got hella digestion issues going on. I can't sleep. My skin is doing weird things. My mood. You want to start to explore what's kind of happening under the hood in those ways. I think a lot of women are also suffering as well, too, because we've been taught so little about the most incredible thing that was ever created, which is our female human body, that we're entering this time in our life where it should actually be really empowering.
Yeah.
Disempowered because we just didn't know. And now we're being like slammed into the proverbial wall of all of these things changing. And when we get taught that this is just your estrogen and progesterone changing, no, it's not. This is a complete system shift that is going on. And so it's very different for every woman. I would say the most important thing in the beginning is start to track how you're feeling and really believe your body. And if you're seeking out help and you're going to your primary care provider, your OBG, your ND, your functional practitioner, and you just don't feel like they're hearing you, they're not seeing what's going on, do not hesitate to try and get a second opinion. And, your education at this time of your life is going to be the most important thing you've got.
Of course. Yeah. The what I'm hearing from a lot of my friends is just like they feel so defeated in it because they're trying all of these certain things and there's no magic pill, there's no magic framework. Hormones are very complex as far as
they're chemicals, right?
Yeah.
So they are influenced by a lot of different things. And, I work with a lot of women who have severe PMS and PMDD. And so what happens to them is like from the midway through their cycle until they get their next period, they just feel like they are just so emotional and they're aware of it. Like they're witnessing themselves in this state.
My best friend has PMDD for the last decade, and seeing her go through that is gnarly.
It's really tricky for a lot of women. And so when we're looking at things like that, we obviously want to address what I already mentioned, digestion, adrenals, and thyroid, but we really need to look at the role progesterone is playing in that woman's body. Yeah. And so oftentimes women will be prescribed oral micronized progesterone. It can take a couple of months. For some women, it happens much sooner and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can breathe again. I feel like I can, I'm more grounded. But we can't only take HRT or even just take supplements and then think that that's a panacea for everything else. So yeah, I would love it if it was just so easy as to be like, you have to do just this one thing.
Yeah. What is the environmental impact? Things like toxicity, food, seed oils, all of that kind of stuff have an impact on perimenopause?
I mean, how long do we have?
We got all day.
So it's significant. And it's because when we get into our 40s, when we're in this, like 40s are really the prime decade of when perimenopause is definitely going to be a part of our life. We've lived 4 decades in this body, in this world. And right now, the women who are going through perimenopause and menopause, we are like this sandwich generation of like the 80s when it was like really good and there wasn't a lot of the toxicity happening. And then now the time we live in, which is like what I'm raising my children in, which is we're like in a toxic soup. So, you know, and as women, we're the target market. Body care, makeup, hair care, you know, feminine products.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Plastic, you know, what's fallen from the sky, what's grown from the ground, like it, you know, EMFs. So it's part of it is, yes, we want to acknowledge there is a lot our body is having to manage on a daily basis. And that takes its toll in a lot of different ways. So if you already had a system where your like rain barrel, your bucket was overflowing, and now you have this additional toxicity, we have to create a pause in our approach for a moment and go, okay, before we just start to try to bring in hormones, can we open up your drainage pathways? Can we support your liver? Can we make sure you're eliminating? Is your lymphatic system supported? Like the work you do, Sam, with breath. I mean, I have goosebumps to say it, but like the breath is a portal, and it's not just a portal to like calming and regulating our nervous system. That breath is part of the highway of our lymphatic system. And so we don't realize, because again, we're not taught this, that we have all of these, you know, it's like there's a bunch of kinks in the hose in our system, and the pressure is building. And we don't have this like open flow that's happening. So, you know, a lot of what I teach and a lot of what we guide women through is before we go upstream and we're trying to work on what we think are all the big things, we need to first make sure, like, are you pooping really well every day and having healthy poops? You know, are we working on that lymph system where you don't have a lot of swelling and a lot of inflammation and joint pain and all of these things? You know, can you digest a food that you're breaking down? And then start to work on some of the other things that are going on. So there is a foundation, there is a system. A lot of people don't love to hear it in the beginning because it sounds boring AF. And they're like, just tell me the biohacking tool.
Yeah, like give me the pill, give me the thing, give me the red light that I stick up my butt, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing. Listen, there's companies reaching out to me all the time right now about the vaginal red light wand. And I'm like, I feel like not yet. Like, there's
one of my girlfriends posted that in our girls chat. And I was like, what is this?
But here's the thing is, like, our human psyche, it's so wild. In one mouthful, we can be like, buying the healthy groceries are so expensive, and we have a hard time justifying that. And then we see a biohacking tool and we're like, I gotta go buy it. And it's no, you don't.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah, I food is the first place. Whenever I'm feeling funky, food's the first place where I like do like a little audit and go like, what's going on? Actually, it's been interesting. The last couple of cycles that I have had have been so much more intense than typically. I don't have any symptoms, nothing. And then the last couple of cycles, I'm like, what is going on down there? So yeah, it's just been feeling more intense. I'm like, okay, I'm beginning to understand and see what people talk about when it comes to their cycle.
Yeah. And it's, you know, what can happen as well too, is that as we get into our later 30s and into our early 40s, the first hormone typically that'll start to bottom out is progesterone, because we'll have less ovulatory cycles, meaning we could still have a period. We could still bleed every month. The endometrium is still thickening because we're still producing estrogen. But if we don't have enough progesterone on board, which can only happen when we actually release an egg and ovulate, now you end up with something that people call estrogen dominance. And it's not that you're actually all of a sudden just producing way more estrogen. It's that you have more estrogen relative to your progesterone. So you can have a healthy amount of estrogen, but if you don't have enough progesterone, estrogen kind of puts on our bossy pants.
I got you. Yeah.
And then you have heavier periods, breast tenderness, mood swings, water retention, headaches, you know, sleep gets disturbed. So like just track it and pay attention, because if you get to the point where you want to work with someone, you have all this data now.
Yeah. This might be a controversial question, and you don't have to answer it, or we can even cut this part out of the podcast. I'm just curious. A lot of the women that I've been in my world have been having huge times, like really struggling getting pregnant. And I feel like I'm seeing it more and more and more. Is that because of the vaccine?
I think it's playing a big role. I'm going to be honest. I've been in clinic for a very long time, and the clinical data that we were able to pull just from the women that we were working with between 2021 and now, very notable changes. Extreme changes in the actual, patterns and behavior of the menstrual cycle, hemorrhagic bleeding that women had never experienced before, periods that were lasting weeks on end, mid-cycle spotting they've never had before. Some women, like literally the whole period coming in 24 to 48 hours, like couldn't control the blood flow, and then bam, it was gone. And we had women in our practice who had been postmenopausal for years who started bleeding again. Like things that, the female body, there's lots of things that can happen, and, never say never, but it was the totality of cases in women who were coming in. The other thing that definitely we have noticed is stronger issues with fertility. Now, I would say that the vaccine is playing potentially a role in that. I think also just our exposure to toxic load overall in the last few years. So, you went down the list of like seed oils and plastics and just everything, phthalates, all of these things, dioxins. Women aren't even, told for the most part that when you're inserting a regular tampon into, your vagina, that is bleached with chemical dioxins, and that's off-gassing into the body. It's
it's so crazy.
It is. It's
the
wild.
Diva Cup too. Is the Diva Cup not?
No,
good?
Diva Cup is okay. That is like a very third-party tested, good quality silicone. Majority of the menstrual cups out there are. Same thing with menstrual discs. Some of the period underwear you do need to be aware of because they may have things like flame retardants and phthalates in them.
That underwear thing doesn't make any sense to me. That's just me though.
I find for some women, it's using it. So if women have a lighter cycle, it can be okay. If you are using something like a cup, and typically you would use a panty liner because there may be a little bit of leakage that happens. Some women may go with the period underwear. But then here's the other thing that I don't think is being talked enough about right now is that, when women can't get pregnant, it's always the women that are looked at. And we do want to do, like, I would run a gut test on a woman. I would look at her minerals. I would look at her thyroid. I would look at all of those things. Yeah. But men, the quality of sperm, there are so many studies that show the quality of men's sperm is becoming depleted. So the quality, the quantity, and the strength of their swimmers. So they may have lots of sperm, but if they're lazy and they don't have the motility anymore and they're long enough to swim, they're not going to be able to get up those actual channels in our body to be able to meet said egg and implant. And then the other side of that is that a woman may not have any issue getting pregnant, but she does not have the resources in her system to be able to actually hold onto and implant the pregnancy. Right. So, here's the thing I will say to people. If you've ever been in a fertility clinic or worked with people who have, one of the very first things you will see when you go in is they're strict as heck about no fragrances, no scents, because they know that the artificial fragrances and scents can have an impact on the embryos, can have an impact. So if that's true, why are we not having warning labels? Why are we, when we go into these stores where you're just like peppered? So it's a big issue.
Is there some sort of protocol? So again, just a lot of my community members are like, I took the vaccine because I felt pressured into it, and now I need to like get it out of my body. Is there a way that we can purge it, cleanse it, do some sort of detox?
So yes, and. So the yes part of it is there's always opportunity to help the health of our body at a lymphatic and a cellular level. So again, what I talked about, making sure the pathways are open and lymph and drainage, liver, gallbladder, and kidneys are going to be the biggest areas that need to be supported if we're talking specifically about anything that has come into the bloodstream and gone into the body in that way. And then obviously like the bowels. So there are certain supplements, there are certain protocols, there are certain companies that have formulated products that are specific to vaccine injury, spike proteins, and cleaning cleaning up any of the cellular debris. And then there's the things to be doing like dry brushing and, you know, sauna and, you know, things like coffee enemas and all of that that's going to create more vasodilation in the body. Aligning your diet so that you are bringing in foods that, you know, when people hear whole food, they're like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, you know, it fell from a tree, it grew from the ground, it ran across land, it swam in the ocean, and it doesn't contain glyphosate.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, like,
I love that description.
yeah. So it is, you know, trying to get back to ingredient-based kitchens as opposed to product-based kitchens.
Got
right?
it.
For that. So
Yeah.
it can feel very overwhelming for a lot of people in the beginning. You know, the other thing I think that's important to connect to is even if the most simple act you took for yourself right now was, can you start to drink filtered water out of glass or stainless steel? Like that's a huge one for people because everything that we are eliminating out of our body is working its way into the water system. You know, they've run tests on waters in many municipalities globally, and you can find traces of the birth control of various medications. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yes. Absolutely. You look at studies they're doing, and they have been doing now for almost 2 decades on testing blood cord of infants who they are just born. They have not been cut from
No way.
and they go and they actually will withdraw the blood from the umbilical cord and test it. Actually, McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, actually did an incredible study on this. Over 200 different chemicals found in the blood cord of infants who had not yet been out into the world, literally had just been born, still attached to mom, sample taken from blood cord. So when you have the naysayers out there who are like, oh, that's just fear mongering and like toxins aren't a thing, or, you know, we're born with filtering organs, we're fine. It's like, yeah. And your vacuum comes with a filter. And you don't never not change that, right? Like, so yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I worked with a naturopath about 5 years ago. I was struggling with chronic bladder infections, like I was just constantly. And when I was younger, like that was going on for 17 years. And when I was younger, every single doctor I went to just put me on another antibiotic, and I didn't have the awareness to realize or ask questions. So I was just like, okay. It actually wasn't the bladder. It was a gut. It was the gut. That was, and then all of the inflammation went to the bladder, so it had symptoms that it was a bladder infection, but it was actually, what's it called? Interstitial cystitis? Yeah. But because of a gut, So it was just so interesting. So one of the first things that she did with me is we did an audit of everything in my household that was toxic, and literally just started on like the physical, right? It's like your toothpaste and your cleaning supplies. And dude, the candle thing, I'm still tripping at the candle thing.
I know.
I love candles. I love them. And so now we go to beeswax, which like, honestly, they don't burn as well, but if it's going to be better for my health, I'm like looking at my fucking beeswax candle. I'm like, why do you burn like this?
Because it's natural. Natural is, not as controlled and pretty as the
totally. So I got to deal with this like holy candle. I'm like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. Anyways, I digress. We started with like the physical, the cleaning supplies, the toothpaste, the shampoos, the beauty products, everything. And then we went to like the food and like got rid of everything in the food that was causing inflammation. And then we just kept going down and down and down and making it more and more detailed. And within 3 months, that plus healing the gut completely got rid of these episodes that I was having. And I was having them weekly, Jen, for 17 years. Yeah. Like there'd be times where I would be backstage at a speaking gig, like fly down to LA, whatever, backstage, and boom, it would come on like a freight train. Like, I'm like, I can't do anything. I'd have to text the organizer and be like, I can't speak. Like it just is debilitating. So that awareness of the things that are creating, you know, a nasty environment inside of my body was absolutely life-changing. And I just wonder, like, for people who are struggling with these chronic health stuff, how much of it is actually healable and solvable and curable through just lowering your toxic load.
Oh my, like Sam, so much of it. And this is, you know, this is the beef that I have a lot of what is put out there sometimes is we make it about the thing that it is not about. And so many are walking through life, so many women specifically, like their body has failed them, their body is broken. They were just like handed a dud in this lifetime. And this is just, the deck of cards they were dealt. And I'm like, that's not true. And if you've yet to work with someone or be part of an environment or hear a conversation where someone paints a different possibility of what could be going on, like, we have multiple microbiomes in our bodies. So what we hear a lot about is the gut microbiome, but we have an oral microbiome that impacts the gut microbiome, the skin microbiome, vaginal microbiome, rectal microbiome. Like, we have multiple, and the word microbiome for everyone listening, what this means is this is the ecosystem of the body you're living in. So people know when you go to plant something in a garden, you don't just chuck seeds in and walk away and be like, hope for the best.
Let's see.
You've got to there's got to be minerals in that soil. There's got to be, light. There has to be hydration. Like, we're just houseplants. Like, we need the same things.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of women who have the chronic UTIs, bacterial vaginosis, chronic yeast infections, they'll, believe a story that it is for different reasons, right? Like being intimate or certain things being up there or stress, and all those things can contribute. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with a bacterial issue. The question is, where's the bacteria coming from? Is it upstream? Is it localized? Also, for so many women, if you have vaginal dryness, and the dryness is very uncomfortable, and you are like, oh, things do not feel good down there. And you go to the doctor and you say, like, I've got pain, I've got some discomfort. You pee in a cup and they're like, oh, there was blood in the cup. You have a UTI. Let's get you on an antibiotic.
That was my story.
Half the time, the blood in the cup is coming from lesions and dryness. So there is bleeding happening vaginally from the dry, irritated tissue, but that doesn't indicate that there's actually a bladder infection.
That was my whole life.
So meanwhile, there's we can do vaginal moisturizers to help that. We can use hyaluronic acid. We could do vaginal estrogen. We can insert, things that are rich in lauric acid and tea tree internally to help to calm and soothe that while working on the gut upstream.
Yeah. Tea tree up the hoo-ha.
I know, we're not pouring it in there.
Okay.
There's a method.
Okay.
But for women who have let's say they've got a yeast infection, it's very itchy and they're just oh my gosh. If you take an organic tampon and you actually melt down some good quality organic coconut oil and you put 1 to 2 drops of tea tree oil in there and then you soak the tampon in that and insert that, it will calm and soothe and cool things down. So tea tree is very antibacterial. So it's I always tell women, let's just start with a drop, see how it feels. More is not better.
Yeah.
And, but it's very calming and cooling.
Wow. How fascinating.
Yeah.
How fascinating. A lot of my friends in perimenopause have been quitting alcohol. Have you felt this movement of just people quitting alcohol?
Yeah, I stopped drinking about 7 years ago when I started to feel symptoms of perimenopause. And I'm 45 now. And so around the age of 37, I wasn't having what I thought were perimenopause symptoms. I started to have histamine issues. And so when I would go and have a glass of wine, I would get congested. I would get flushed in my face. I would feel just kind of ruddy. And I would wake up feeling hot in the middle of the night. And I was like, what's happening? But it was only when I would have the wine. Then I started to notice it when I would also have a charcuterie board, everything delicious, essentially. When I would eat anything delicious, my body was like, no, not for you. We're going to congest you. And I would get all these different things happening. So, and my hangovers from 2 glasses of wine would just freaking crush me. And I was like, I can't, this is not worth it. So I started at the age of 37, just cutting it out. I'd go a few months, not have any. I'd have another glass. And then again, and then I just got to the point where I'm like, I don't even care. I became so detached to it. And what I actually realized for me was, it wasn't so much about the alcohol. It was I just needed to have the glass with something in it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a massive movement and I'm here for it because alcohol's never been something that is healthy for us. There's no benefit. But as we start to get into our 40s and definitely into our 50s, alcohol is a type 1 carcinogen. It is, we're so worried about using hormones for our breast health, but we're not worried about drinking wine. We're not worried, right? All of these things. So there's, I'm definitely here for the less alcohol for women.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never been a big drinker. I was a competitive dancer growing up, and so I was constantly training, and if I wasn't training, I was competing, and if I wasn't competing, I was resting. So like growing up in high school, I was always the designated driver. I was always the one driving my stupid drunk friends around. And then as an adult, it just never was the thing. I didn't understand it. I'm like, wait, why would we ruin tomorrow? Why would we borrow happiness from tomorrow?
Yeah.
I never was like, I'm never drinking. I'm not drinking, but I'll have like a drink once every 2 months. But now in the last probably like in the last 2 years, even that one glass of wine every 2 months, like, I shit you not, I'll take the glass and I'll put it up to my lips, and I literally can hear it, all parts of my body being like, no, 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 no. Yeah, it's really wild. And then the next day, I never have more than one, and then I'll have one, and then I'm like, oh, that was, I'll drink it, and I'll be like, okay, whatever. The next day, I am the most anxious person on the planet. Yeah. I'm like, and I don't really spin out. I'm pretty regulated. But if I have alcohol, shit. I'm like, this is just not worth it.
Yeah. Well, this is it. And I think this is the place a lot of women have gotten to. And I think why it's been the last few years is I feel like early COVID, people went the other, like they swung the pendulum a little too hard. Like it was like 5 o'clock at like 11 a.m. And it was like, oh, we're home, and there was just more that was flowing. And I think that people were really like, okay. The other thing for a lot of women, I think, in pulling it out is so many women are struggling with their body composition and their body changing. And it's like, if we can look at the things like, I don't know about you, but I'd rather eat delicious calories than drink delicious calories. And so I think it's a little bit of that kind of exchange for some women too.
100%. Yeah. Like a nice charcuterie board, for
right?
instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really wild how under-researched women's bodies are. There's been so much more research done on men's bodies than there has been women's bodies, especially, when it comes to hormones, all sorts of things. So it's really an interesting time for all of us women who do want to take our health seriously. We have to really go the extra mile and not take it at, not take one doctor's opinion, and really just be our own researchers to figure out like, what is it that I need in this phase of my life in order to feel vitality and alive. And the women that I am close with, whether they're my clients or my friends, are like, I just want to feel the energy that I felt in my 30s or my 20s or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I get that because like I'm in my mid 40s, but there's also very intentional unraveling that happens in our lives and in our bodies as we get into this stage where it's like the stronger we try to grip to the version of us that the harder your entry into this stage is going to be. So it's like, we want to have energy. We want to feel good. We want to have like all our cognitive functional ability. We want to feel regulated, have good libido, all of those things. And it's like, we have to meet ourselves where we're at. So for a lot of women, the other thing that happens at this time of life is like, all the stuff that you thought you dealt with, all of the old experiences, the trauma, they can come find you.
Yeah, man.
And it's like, so who you surround yourself with, I think in perimenopause should be in your perimenopause toolkit. And this isn't on the list of, the red light and the supplements and the HRT and that, but the other humans that you spend time with. Oh my gosh. I mean, your environment always matters, but at this time in your life, like you want to be able to hang with the people where you don't have to edit yourself. Yeah. You don't have to, justify, like you can just be and you can be held. It's really important.
100%. So good. So if we want to go deeper and learn even more, let us know where we can find you on the interwebs.
The interweb, the best place I hang out is on Instagram. So it's Jenn with 2 N's, Pike. And then inside of my program. So if you head over to Instagram, you can read all about them, or you can go to jennpike.com. And then I have a podcast called The Simplicity Sessions, which you're coming on soon. Yeah. And I have 2 weekly episodes. So Mondays are all about women's health, hormones, fitness. And Thursdays are about business and money and mindset and, just who we are as women showing up in the world.
So good. Jenn, thank you so much for coming on. This was so epic and just so eye-opening. And I know it's going to add a ton of value to this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.